All right, folks, lots of great information coming your way. It's going to be stuff that you're going to come back to over the course of our time together. If you have questions at any point, please ask your question. We'll set some time aside at the end of the lecture for you to ask as well. But today we're going to dig into the basics, mastering those basics, making you feel confident in videography. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. All right, so we're going to talk about purpose before practice. We're going to get into what I call the pillars of videography. This is by no means a definitive list. It's just something that I use whenever I'm filming video, and then we'll take a look at some examples where this brings everything together. All right, so purpose before practice. A lot of folks get really excited when they see cameras. They want to start shooting right away, but I think it's really important that you know before you go and that you know before you show. So we're going to go through each of these pillars and we're going to try to understand the why before the how. All right, so if you can imagine these pillars, like I said, this is not the final list. There are probably other pillars to account for as well, but these are the pillars that I use. So there's focus, lighting, composition, and sound. I tried to come up with a way to remember them. So if you take the first letter of each of them, flicks, it kind of sounds like flicks, so we'll go with that. Focus. So first off, the picture on your screen is Ariana Grande. It's her music video. So Ariana is my favorite artist of all time. And the music video here is from the song Focus. So why is focus important? So intention and direction, right? So intention, there's got to be a point to why something is in focus or out of focus. So being really clear about what you want to show, focus is really, really important with that. Direction too. It also guides the viewer's eyes to where they should go or where they should follow. Especially when you're doing motion shots, sports, for example, you want to make sure that your focus is clear on the person that you're trying to capture. All right, so how do we accomplish this? On your cameras, there are two settings, manual and auto. Manual is the strongly preferred option. It's what professors will tell you to use. I am also one of those professors, but I will also say that auto is okay in some circumstances, especially if you're doing an interview or a shot that's not going to move. I'm fine with auto being an option there, especially when you don't have time. Auto can be something you can fall back on. There are pros and cons to both, right? So pros to manual, you have more control, but that also means you're gonna have to monitor your shot more and adjust as necessary. Auto, no need to adjust, and there's really no monitoring at all. However, you have less control, and there's this thing called pixelation, where sometimes if something moves in a shot, your camera will try to correct, and so you might see the focus going in and out. It might become blurry or glitchy. So those are some drawbacks to that. Lighting is the second pillar. So why is lighting important? Number one, visibility. As you see in this picture here, a difference in lighting makes, clear editorial decisions about what you want to show. Coverage too. So how do we fully show something or someone? A lot of that is accomplished through lighting. So how do we accomplish this? First, you have to look at the sources. If you're outside, take advantage of the natural daylight. If you're inside, try to be near a window. You also have, ring lights. You have, lights overhead. You have lamps. Cell phones have lights. So just different types of lighting sources are available. Something I do want to bring up now is something called three-point lighting. We'll take a look at this image here. So three-point lighting, first of all, I will say is ideal, but there are certain situations and circumstances where you can't have this happening. Here at the center, we do have equipment available for three-point lighting, so let me break that down for you. So this is usually done for an interview where a subject is either looking right into the camera or just to the side. The key light will be the one that's closest to the subject with the most intensity, and it'll be to the side, like a 45-degree angle, left or right. Fill light will be on the other side of that camera at a distance and less intense, covering up those shadows made from the key light. And the backlight, as you might imagine, shines from the back of the subject, creates this distance between the subject and the background. Composition, pillar number 3. Why is composition important? So you can see in this example here, you can show off a lot of detail, not only in the foreground, but in the background. Creativity too. So this is one of my favorite aspects of composition. There's a saying in news where you make air and not art because you're crunched for time, you're just trying to get something on TV. But when you do have time, creativity is a really great way to show off your skills and to explain, what the viewer is seeing. So how do we accomplish composition? There are different types of shots that you can take. There's extreme close-up, medium, wide. Some people say extra wide. They help you accomplish different functions that you'd like to share with the viewer. Oftentimes, interviews are done in this standard medium shot, but what I like to do sometimes is after each question, I get to change up the shot. Maybe I do a wide shot, maybe I do a close-up. It all depends on what I want to do, and it gives me more variety when it comes to editing the video. There's a concept called headroom. So here in this example is a lot of headroom, which is defined as the space between the top of the person's head and the top of the screen. So ideally, you want enough headroom, but not too much. This example, I feel like there's a lot of headroom. This may have been intentional by the producers, but it makes your subject appear small. And if you have less headroom or not enough headroom, you're potentially cutting off that person's head. So you want there to be a nice balance between the two. You also see here rule of thirds in quotation marks. So it is a rule of thumb, but I do think in certain circumstances, it can be broken. So let's take a closer look. So let's say that you divided your shot into a 3x3 grid, kind of like a tic-tac-toe board. And where those lines intersect, shown here with those blue dots, that's where you want to put the focus of your composition. So when you're doing an interview, the eyes of the subject near those lines of intersection, those points of intersection. What this should do then is should allow 1/3 of your screen to be essentially empty. So that can be that space that person's eyes can look to fill that space. So they're not taking up the whole space. There's a little bit of breathing room there. All right, sound is the final pillar. Hopefully you know this picture is from The Sound of Music featuring Julie Andrews. So why is sound important? Well, number one, it connects, right? So how is what you're hearing complementing what you're seeing? And another thing is context too. It puts you into a situation, maybe you're watching the news and all of a sudden, like you're not listening, you're not really looking at it, but you hear something and it brings your attention back. So context is really important. It also helps establish environment. So if you're in a school, you might hear a bell ringing or children chattering or a locker closing. It brings a fuller experience. How do we accomplish sound? So there's different types of sources for microphones, for example. There's one that's part of your phone, there's part of your camera, internal microphones. You see a shotgun mic, you see handheld mics. There's a boom mic, which is like a long pole with like a fuzzy long wind guard. On the very right here, you see what's called a lavalier or a clip-on mic, which you can clip onto your subject without having to hold a microphone for them. Volume is going to be very important. There will be a manual versus auto function on your camera. I always strongly recommend manual. And one of the reasons why is, the last note here is headphones. I am requiring all of you to wear headphones because you may see sound levels on your screen and there's something coming from your camera, but you can't tell what that is. Having headphones on allows you to hear exactly what that is. If there's static coming from the microphone, if your subject is somehow rubbing against their microphone, you can hear that and you can make adjustments on the fly. I also recommend after you film something to go back and listen to it. I would hate for you to have this really long interview done only to go back to the editing booth and realize that your sound makes your clip unusable for whatever reason. So always wear headphones. All right, so got two examples for you that hopefully you'll be able to kind of see these things all come together. When you watch these, think about focus, lighting, composition, and sound. This first example is from my friend Tiffany Liu. She is a news reporter in Dallas, Texas. This actually isn't a news report, this is a news feature. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of what Tiffany is sharing.
Where do I begin? I am angry, I am sad, and I'm scared. I'm scared because I don't want my family to become the next target, to be the next Asian Americans killed out of hate.
All right, so focus is the first thing we're going to look at. Clearly, Tiffany is in focus. The background is out of focus, and that's intentional. We want the focus to be on Tiffany. Lighting, here's an example of three-point lighting. You can see clear lighting on both sides of her face. You can see some light from behind her that separates her from the background. Composition, I think you saw different types of shots. There was a close-up shot, there's this medium shot, so there's that. And here's an example where the rule of thirds isn't applicable because she's not being interviewed, she's telling her story, so it's okay for her to be in the direct center of the screen. And sound purposes, you see that there's a lavalier mic that's clipped onto her blazer, capturing her sound beautifully. All right, the other example I have is from my favorite television show, RuPaul's Drag Race. We'll take a look at this epic lip sync from the most recent season. Okay, so I'm gonna stop it there because this is iconic. There's also a technique here that's more advanced for our class, but there's something called rack focus. So let's talk about focus first. You see in this shot, there is a foreground with Lady Camden wearing the pink and Bosco in the background wearing the black. So in this shot, rack focus means when you can switch focus from a background to a foreground or vice versa. So here, the foreground, Lady Camden is in focus. You'll see earlier in this shot that Bosco becomes in focus, the background, and then it goes back to Lady Camden. So just a brilliant use of focus, and it also allows the viewer to kind of see where the videographer wants you to pay attention to. Because this is a lip sync and both of them are trying to, stay in the competition, focus is a really important way of capturing that. Lighting, also clearly well lit. Lady Camden and Bosco. You can also see some queens in the background. They're not well lit. And that's because the videographer wants you to focus on the queens as they are performing. Composition, this shot, for example, captures both queens at the same time. You can also see that there are queens in the background cheering them on. So a really purposeful shot there. And sound, this is, of course, a song that they're lip syncing to. So the sound is provided as background music. All right, getting back into our lesson. So I know that there was a lot of information that was just shared with you. I want you to have an opportunity to ask questions. If there's something that you'd like to go back and review, we can do that as well. But these pillars are going to be super, super important for you to keep in mind as you start filming things. So a lot of great information, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.